Hey guys, David here. I'm sitting here with George Stewart. Hi George, how's it going?
Good, good. Glad to see you again, David.
Thank you so much for giving me some time and allowing me into your beautiful home. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So George, I was wondering if you had a few minutes to talk about the election today.
Certainly.
Wonderful, thank you. So first of all, before we get started, tell me a little bit about yourself and what do you do?
Well, I'm in my 70s now. I'm retired. I was in the U.S. military. Most of the men of my age were, and served there. And then after that, I spent, for the most part, 42 years in the airline industry in many different capacities, 3 different international airlines. I had side businesses in real estate, and I'm knowledgeable in international trade and real estate. And since I retired, I kind of reinvented myself and went back to some of the things that I thought would be good to get out of my comfort zone so I could grow a little bit, and took some courses in opinion writing, did some opinion writing, got some stuff published up here in Las Vegas Review-Journal, and started a blog, openeyesopinion.com, and just recently I've got away from world affairs, world trade, and just concentrating on world travel and tourism, which is has always been important to me. I've been traveling since I was 18, and just recently got back from Europe. Went to the UK, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Estonia, and Russia.
Wow.
And I'll be back again in Europe in a couple of months. And so I spent about 9 months in Henderson, Nevada, 8 or 9 months, and the rest of the time I'm out traveling internationally.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds like you have a very international viewpoint, so I'm sure you have a very interesting opinion about this election. Tell me, what are your thoughts on this election?
Well, first of all, give you a little bit about my political background. When I got out of the military in 1967, came back to the United States, I was pretty much apolitical and didn't get involved in too much things, and really wasn't too concerned about life in general, to tell you the truth. And then when I got up in my 30s, I got a little bit more serious about things, and got married and from a beautiful wife, and started thinking more about what's happening in the United States. Currently, right now, I'm disappointed in every political party we have. I'm disappointed in the way that our elected officials are behaving and conducting the day-to-day business of our government. And if I had to forecast in the future, I'm not too positive about the outlook of what's going to happen with the United States of America.
And you elaborate more on that. Why do you feel that we're in a problem in our country?
Well, I think that our elected leaders are getting a little bit too much out of contact with the general populace, what they're thinking. And I don't think, because of the political environment that we've had the last few years, that we can attract any really powerful leaders that need to correct this mess there, because I don't think anybody wants to get in that quagmire, bogged down in that quagmire. So I don't know where we're headed from now, but I do realize that I'm not so naive to realize that you have to say a lot of things that you can't, make a lot of promises that you can't fulfill during your campaign to get your votes. But I am very concerned about what's going to happen after this election, and how it's going to affect the what I perceive to be a social disintegration happening in the United States.
Wow. Do you have a particular candidate that you're rooting for? Any particular direction you want to see this country go?
I'm not voting for somebody, I'm voting against somebody.
Very interesting viewpoint. Could you elaborate more on that? I'm curious about that.
Okay, well, number one, I'm a registered libertarian. I was in the Democratic Party for many, many years, and then I voted for Obama in his first administration. And I consider that to be a big mistake. So I got out of because the Democratic Party isn't what it was 30 years ago. It's completely different. And then I just threw a dart at the dartboard for the 2 other independent parties, Libertarian and Independent. Ended up on Libertarian. And I really don't agree with all of the platforms of either one of those parties. And the two major parties dominate everything, so I really don't see where a candidate from those parties, unless things drastically change and people wake up and started changing their political affiliations. I don't think those parties are going to go anywhere. They don't even get invited to political debates.
Sure.
They're subjugated, and my personal opinion, both the two dominant parties, Republican and Democratic, on many, many issues, when you get behind doors, they become fungible. I'm also disappointed in the way that they're reacting, because they've become so much more polarized in the last 8 years than they ever were before. Because you could have bills that would come up that would have bipartisan. Maybe a Republican come up with a bill, and the Democratic Party in general didn't like it, but there were Democrats, elected Democrat officials in there who would say, well, I kind of like that bill, I'll vote for it. Now you're seeing Democrats, Republicans, Republicans, Democrats. You're not seeing what's good for the nation. You're saying what's good for the party. What's good for that party may not be good for our nation.
Makes perfect sense. Can you tell me, well, you've actually dived into a bit of how your life has shaped your political beliefs. Tell me a little bit about a childhood memory that you think shaped the person you are today.
Well, it wouldn't be one particular incident. I was brought up on the poverty level in Colorado, and my dad was a blue-collar worker. He did cement work, contractor's work. He drove trucks. He also had the gold bug. So he would do prospecting, and we actually had a mine that we worked. And so when he'd make money at that, he would go back and spend it in the mine. So during the winters, we didn't have any money. So I understand what poverty is. You know, we actually, several winters, we ate off of metal pie plates. That was our silverware, right? And wore my older cousin's clothes for several years. I had a very loving mother, father, and sister and brother, so we're a very close family, so that didn't affect us there. So I don't think poverty affects you in any way that way. But in retrospect, as a septuagenarian right now, I'm thinking, because our high school at that point had very diversified economic levels of people, because we had a lot of engineers that came out to work there. And their kids would drive up to school in MGs, and here we were with patches on our knees, you know, trying to do. So I think I understand a lot of these people that are living on the poverty, this youth that are living on the poverty level in the United States right now, how they feel. Because along with that, I think subconsciously you start feeling a little bit inferior just because of your economic level. But that shouldn't be. See, that's what you go over. So in later life, of course, it was built into me independent thinking and a work ethic, which helped me tremendously later on. But I think along with that, you know, my parents says, well, just go out and do this, do that, whatever. And as far as as a racial problem we have in the United States, I grew up, I was able to choose my own friends, you know, forever. And basically where I grew up, a lot of my friends were Hispanic and military Hispanic, and even now today Hispanic. And what I'm feeling that we're missing the point now, and a lot of the politicians are missing the point. They're not giving a hand up to a lot of these people. They're giving them a handout. And there's absolutely, if you break it down, you could look at some of the Cato statistics on this, welfare versus work, that there's absolutely no incentive for these people to get off of welfare. You got to have a welfare work program. You got to be able to install some type of self-confidence, and you can't let these race baiters give them a victim mentality. You know, that there's an evil white man behind every bush trying to get them, because there's so much opportunity out there now with the affirmative action programs, all the multitude of programs that spawn from that. There's no reason to be on the social injustice bandwagon. You're just being race baited. I wish that we would have leaders like in the black community, especially like Thomas Sowell, and people like that. And going back to that in 1960s, I was a outspoken advocate of equal rights. And then when affirmative action came in, right now it's 65, and LBJ did that, I figured that's it. Equal rights is dead in this country, because it is, you know. And it was headed in the right direction. And I think a lot of people will disagree with me. Millions of people will disagree with me on this. But in my mind, I know I'm right, because there were such programs now like Don't Live for the Weekend, telling the youth, like, you know, get your ass out there and do something. Don't live for the weekend, get ahead, the opportunity is there. Instead, these programs just pushed them back, and they're sitting home, making babies, drinking Heineken, getting the equivalent of 57 grand a year on some of the programs, you know, net without, and so there's no incentive, you know. And then they just get used as, from all these other people who are exploiting them on ethnic issues. I wish that our leaders would get up and start addressing this issue, because in the last 8 years, race relations have been pushed back to the 1950s. If you could just start putting these positive affirmations in these kids' heads, say, okay, every morning when you get up in the morning, I want you to look in the mirror, and when you go to bed at night, look in the mirror and you say this: from the day that I was born, no one owes me anything. Once you start programming yourself that way, which I did, right? Because, you know, if you're raised on poverty, you think, well, those cards are stacked against me and this and that and blah, 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 and you start tear-jerking. Forget about it. Get your ass out and start doing things yourself. Have an independent mind, critical reasoning skills, and don't let anybody dictate to who you should like and who you not like. Go through life, pick and choose your own friends. But the main thing is realize that you have to be self-sufficient. You've got to do this yourself. And when you see people that are successful, that are honest with a lot of integrity and things, that's who you should model yourself after. Stay away from the race baiters.
Wow, George, really, really great stuff. Thank you so much for your time and taking time out to talk to me and allowing me into your beautiful home.
Fine, anytime. Welcome back anytime.
Well, definitely we'll see you soon.
When you get all this solved and you go to Washington, D.C. and get them all squared away, come back and let me know.
That's the plan, you know. We're gonna take all this video and hopefully we'll get someone to listen out there.
So you're gonna make your cross-country tour across America.
That's right. So
should be interesting for you.
Definitely will be interesting, you know, so especially as we keep gathering more interviews and we start compiling it. I'm really curious to see what people are really thinking out there. Because as we talked about earlier before we started filming, and maybe we can touch on this a little bit, the media in this country censors so much. We get so little of what's actually happening.
Well, that's one of the major issues now, is that in the last 8 years, the United States has basically been put on information lockdown. Because of my blog that I had, I can go in there on one of my emails, and I probably, for the last 2 days, had about 3,000 emails coming in from different government officials and NGOs and international banks and foreign affairs officers and everything. So I weed through them and I can see what's going on. Basically, you have to be honest with yourself. You go on the major mainstream media TVs and you turn that TV on at 7 in the morning and turn it off at 11 at night. What have you gained from that? What information have you got out of that? Especially now, all you're seeing is Trump, Hillary, Hillary, Trump, Trump, for hours and hours and hours. There's so many things that are going on that our government is doing that you don't have any access to. Give an example, if you don't believe that, I know that recently the Public Affairs Office from current administration published in one of the major newspapers that this has been the most transparent administration ever. Well, no, it's been the least transparent administration ever in the history of the United States. You're all being closed down. Several times, I belong to the SPJ, Society of Professional Journalists, Association of Opinion Journalists, and Online News Association, and some of those other journalistic organizations. I belong to the the Las Vegas chapter of the World Affairs Council. And the organizations journalistic organizations were so shut out that they felt it necessary to petition the Obama administration numerous times. One of them was just recently, 3 weeks ago, after this thing that was published about being the most transparent. They've had up to as many as 50 journalism organizations on one petition to try to elicit the release of information with the government, even on the most mundane subjects. It's hard to get into a public affairs office. You want something on the U.S. agriculture, you want this, you want that. You know, it's basically what stays in the government, what happens in the government stays in the government.
Right.
And every individual out there in this country has to really think about that. What do you know what your government is doing? What do you know what laws have been passed? Well, the laws that have been passed and executive orders and things like that, you can go to CFRs, the Code of Federal Regulations, and there's stacks of them about that thick, and if you're not cognizant in reading regulatory law, a lot of the stuff will bypass you because certain words like should doesn't mean will not, and then after you read about 5 or 6 of these pages, you'll see one little clause in there that will say something like, and all the above, we have to be in compliance with our international agreements, which basically tells you the hard treaty, a soft treaty becomes a hard treaty, and that becomes a law of the land and is implemented in the domestic regulations of this country. That's how the multinational corporations and other foreign countries are able to gain access to your regulatory laws in this country without going through the legislative bodies of the United States of America.
Wow. Well, before we wrap up, George, is there any last topic or idea or anything in regards to this election or the politics of it that you'd like our audience to hear?
Well, as far as the election goes, like I say, I'm very disturbed about it. I don't have any unrealistic expectations at all. You pretty much know what is going to happen after Hillary gets in there. You do not know what's going to happen after if Trump gets in. That's a question mark because he's never been a politician before, so you don't have any. There's no intrinsic evidence there that will let you know because they're both saying things that they can't. They're both making promises, like all other politicians, that you can't keep. But my major concern is now the security of the United States. We definitely have to get on that. It's more severe than any of you could even realize. I travel to Europe quite frequently, and I'm very aware of what's going on over there, and it's not good. And I'm also realize a lot of this has gained a foothold in our country due to the present administration. It's not good. And one of the main issues that we have to address, and we have to address this very rapidly now, and it has to be addressed, the social disintegration of the racial relations we have in this company is absolutely ridiculous, how far back it's been set. And the mindset of some of these people it's just blind hatred because they've been pumped up with this, and there's really no reason for a lot of it happening here. So we need to have a coming together, a cohesion of the citizens and residents of this country, and that's going to take a very dynamic person to do that. So I don't think that will be happening on the national level. That has to happen within your community yourself. What do you want? Don't wait for somebody else. Like I say, told you before, from the day that you were born, nobody owes you anything. So your community has to address the problems. Leaders in those communities are willing to do that instead of just pointing your fingers and wanting to go out and destroy everybody else that you think caused you a problem. That's a victim mentality. That means that you're subject to the manipulators, and they're just going to use you to harvest votes. So if you develop that mentality, you're giving somebody else free rent in your head that shouldn't be there.